Hello, friends and listeners, party people. Welcome back to another episode of Party XP. I'm your host, Lakan. Well, kind of. Today, this episode is hosted by my friend Jeff. Say hi, Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
Once again, Jeff Fernandez is filling in again for Jeff Katubi, who is still on daddy duties. So Jeff Fernandez will be hosting this episode, or at least pitching me the episode for this one. So how have you been, buddy?
I'm doing okay, hanging in there. Although, except, a lot going on in life, both relationship-wise, work-wise, all kinds of things. So now's a good time to give you a show to, hopefully you can relax to. And actually, there's quite a bit to think about. So,
Okay.
Yeah, got an interesting one for you.
Yeah, things are busy on my end, too, with brother's wedding coming up, too. So I've actually been pretty busy.
All right.
At least a lot of things are on my mind. You know what I mean? So, sometimes.
Bachelor party.
Yeah, totally. We're gonna
Yeah,
get around
which
to that.
dude to jump out of the cake?
Yeah, exactly. Still haven't figured out if that's going to happen. Starting to ramp up now.
So, viewers and listeners, if you want to have Gabe's bachelor party without him, please let Lakan know.
No.
And if you are volunteering to jump out of the cake...
Yeah. But yeah, things are busy on my end as well, too. And I'm trying to just keep everything together at this point, honestly.
Oh, dude, I think that's a summary of the year. Just keep everything together.
Yeah. That's all I'm trying. That's all I can hope for, honestly, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
But yeah, so go ahead and let me know what you're looking at this week.
All right, what I'm looking at is Lakan. If you remember, either last Comic-Con or a couple Comic-Cons ago, there was a show. Actually, it was the kiosk was for the Amazon Prime audiobook. But then the show became had a lot of work, had a lot of hype about it. Let me start that over. Yeah. So yeah, Lakan, if you remember, it was either the last Comic-Con or a couple Comic-Cons ago. There's a show by Neil Gaiman. If you're not familiar with Neil Gaiman, he's the guy that wrote Coraline. He was involved with Good Omens. If you saw the movie Stardust, bunch of stuff. He's just he's one of those really, really well-known fantasy writers. For people who know him, he's like a god. Lowercase g. Actually, there you go too. He did American Gods, which was great until that show had a different showrunner. But I will tell you about one of his other shows, which is based off of his magnum opus called Sandman. So it's a show of the same name based on a comic book. Now, that was a comic book that started in 1989, and the main part of the series went from 1989 to 1996. It is a horror fantasy series. Started out as horror and became more fantasy mythology. That's actually what Neil Gaiman is known for, being very mythology heavy.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
I think I remember this from Comic-Con. This is the one that had like an outdoor booth, right? It was like a photo booth with like AR.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. I remember you and your sister being very excited for it, and I had no idea what you guys were geeking out over, basically. And I was like, I'm here for the ride, I guess.
It was pretty cool. It was a great.
Yeah, it was a cool booth. Yeah. I remember seeing the little animated GIF thing that they sent us for it.
Yep. And free bags.
That's true.
Free tote bags.
Yeah, free merch. I always take it.
Yeah. So the story is that Dream is captured by a cult that was actually trying to capture Death. Now, Dream and Death are part of a family called the Endless. So you have Dream, Death, Destiny, Delirium, Despair. All these. There's a bunch of them. Super interesting. So this cult captured the wrong one, and Dream is the main character, or the Sandman, also known as Morpheus, and we try to find out, will he escape from this cult? How long will it take? What will happen? And what happened to Dream's kingdom while he was away?
Okay. I can probably say relatively safely, not a story I've heard of in any other medium, I guess. Like, like a lot of times if you read or watch any, anything, if you watch a lot of shows, right, or read a lot of books, you can kind of like see like tropes or like general story ideas, story beats or whatever.
Yep.
And a lot of them start to like kind of feel samey, I guess.
Yeah.
Not something I can say I've seen or heard.
Right. And it was actually thought to be unfilmable at one point.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any reason for that?
Several attempts have been made because once again, the comic, the main part of the comic ended in 1996. Gaiman's generated some more comic books lately and some more stories lately, and it's actually kind of expanded. If you recall Lucifer was actually was a main character from the comic book and kind of spun off from that.
Oh, so the show is a spinoff essentially from the book.
Yeah.
Oh, sick. Okay, cool.
Pretty cool.
Same universe. Okay.
Yep, same
Gotcha.
universe. And actually, interestingly enough, the original comic book was a DC comic book. Yeah, imagine. Yeah. So then you actually do have some DC characters that pop up in the Sandman series, including Constantine. Who else? Once again, Lucifer's there, but when Lucifer, the idea came from Sandman.
Yeah,
so.
just because you're talking about like demons and stuff like that, or like eternal figures, I just assumed Spawn. The first thing that came to mind, but I was like, wait, nope, that's not DC.
Actually, I would love for Spawn to show up in like maybe.
Spawn DC? No, he's Marvel.
Spawn was actually Image Comics.
Image Comics. Yeah. I'm dumb. Okay, I'm dumb. Not a fake fan. Fake comic fan here. I guess.
Well, I don't know. Also, we were tainted by the Michael J. White movie version with John Leguizamo, so that was that was rubbish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did Michael J. White in Dirty in that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although I do enjoy Michael J. White.
Oh no, that's what I'm saying. They did him dirty in that one. Yeah. It was not a good movie.
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because that's cool. I didn't realize that it was actually more involved. I assumed that when you guys were trying to explain this to me in the first place, I thought this was like just some weird, not one off, but like a weird story that like you have to be a real nerd to enjoy it.
Right.
That's what it sounded like to me because you guys were so into it, and I'm like, because you guys were like, we were literally walking around the convention, and you were like telling me about trying to give me like a synopsis without spoiling anything for me.
And that's the tough part because like it does get so involved. And actually, interestingly enough, one of the Sandman comics was the only comic book that got a Nebula Award or Hugo. It was either a Hugo Award or a Nebula Award, but something like that. And it was the only one that won it because after that they said nope, these don't qualify anymore. But it was great. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'm down for this. I have heard you say again multiple times that this show was very good.
Yeah.
It was something that was kind of like on my radar, but I wasn't like super invested in the idea of trying to catch up to. Especially, I watched so much stuff to begin with. You know what I mean? I was like, I where the hell am I going to fit this in? And this podcast is a perfect time to force me to watch something that again, you and other friends who around you around our friend circle have said this show is very good. So I was like, okay, I guess it forces me to watch it, which is cool.
Very cool.
Anything else you want to cover before we dip out of here?
Yeah, and just mentioning too that it was once thought to be unfilmable, and there have been several attempts in the past. Originally, they wanted to turn it into a movie, but then at some point, Neil Gaiman, once again the auteur behind this was like, nope, not going to work. And he even said at one point, he would rather it not be made and stay in the comics than someone make a crap version of it. And there were several versions which were didn't hit the mark. So finally they did, and I'm glad for it, and I hope you are too.
Okay, cool. So listeners, going to be a short break here. Probably going to give this a week or two, and we're going to see how I feel about Sandman. See you in a bit.
All right, Lakan, so we are talking about Sandman. Which is a series, not the comic book, but it's the series based off the comic book made by Neil Gaiman. So, you've had some time to watch a show. What'd you think? How'd you like it?
It's a good show. I think we mentioned it before in the first half of the of this episode, right? Where you mentioned it that it was in development hell for a while and all this other stuff, right? I didn't realize that like it was a comic. I don't know if you mentioned it was a comic or not before. I just assumed it was a book, like because you're a nerd. And I don't read books. I do. I play dumb, but it was a good show. I definitely not sped through this show like I didn't do like a full on binge, but I definitely caught like 3 or 4 episodes a day starting on Tuesday. And then I caught, I broke it up, and then yesterday I caught the last 3 episodes, including the 1 hour long episode at the end. But it's a good show. Genuinely surprised that I didn't see more people talking about this as well too. Like we talked about it with Andor, where I feel like none of my circle was talking about it. But I have some friends who are into comics, and I have a friend of mine who's very into DC. I'm surprised he never mentioned anything about the show. But it's very enjoyable. A lot of big thematical ideas here in the show.
Oh yeah,
that my unga bunga brain had like a little bit of trouble like trying to distinguish what's happening. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. The aesthetic, like my high school emo self would have loved this show. You know what I mean? Like the dark, brooding main character, and very stoic, and a lot of like, I don't know if it sounds flowery, but I think it's because everybody's British that it just, you know what I mean, that it makes
Yeah.
everything sound much fancier than it actually is.
I mean, because Neil Gaiman's British, so and
Yes.
how it is. Everything British sounds a little bit better.
Yeah, more sophisticated, right?
Just like the villains on Andor.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, it's just I tried to distance my thinking away from that as much as I could, to convert, the whole idea that like everything feels more uptight and more sophisticated and high thought, when everything's British, or everyone has an English accent or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed the show. The aesthetic was really cool. The production value is really good for the most part. I felt like there was a couple times where the CGI was a little wonky, but like but especially in the beginning of the show, like everything looked really, really nice. Like the production value was great.
Oh, good. And I'm glad you enjoyed it. And yeah, because and please pardon the sniffles. It is allergy season here on the East Coast of the United States.
Ugh.
Actually, it's not even April showers. We haven't had much April showers, but April pollen brings the May flowers. So
yeah, I'm getting destroyed as well.
Yeah. But no, and I'm totally glad you enjoyed it because once again, it's a show, and it's been quite a while since the comic came out. And it's interesting that you mentioned that, because originally it was a comic, then it turned into an audiobook after a while, or more like an audio drama. And that's more recent. Like for the longest time, Sandman just existed as a comic book.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of the things where it was almost thought to be unfilmable. Maybe by virtue of the amount of information there or that kind of thing. But yeah, as mentioned, it was through development hell in various levels of hell, and various levels of hell, which we probably saw in the show.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I noticed once I got I want to say halfway through the show is that they cover a lot. Like I don't know how long the comic was, or if it's still ongoing. I'm assuming it's still ongoing. But like I remember during the first half of it, I guess, the first arc, I guess, of the story, it felt like there was a lot of cramming of world building and characters and stuff like that, which is it was done in a way that I was still able to keep track of what's going on, but it felt like it scaled very quickly, if that makes sense.
Yes, totally.
It goes from okay, I understand the idea of what's the term that they use for them? The endless.
Yes.
As essentially like demigods, I guess, right? I guess that's kind of talks of God, the devil, and then the endless, which are kind of other higher level beings, right? So they're kind of like a demigod, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And just because it scaled so quickly, it felt like I was just getting bombarded with information early on. Again, I was able to keep track of it for the most part, but it just felt like a lot was going on in the beginning of it, and it had a little bit of weird pacing to me because of it in the first 3 or so episodes. But then once things kind of started getting more focused on the individual characters in episode 3, 4, 5, you know what I mean? You start getting really, really exploring a lot of the characters more. Once they switched over from the big world building stuff and then switching over to more of a character focused, I was able to kind of sit back and enjoy the show a little bit more.
Yeah. Admittedly, because one of the ideas was they signed on for, how shows go, signed on for one season, and we don't know. It's Netflix.
Yeah, that's fair.
We've seen shows where the first show, the first season's great. Okay, can't wait for the second one. Canceled.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, Netflix. Hashtag the Dark Crystal. Don't know if you saw that one. Hey, and couldn't include that in future things. Or for example, something that is tied to Sandman, which is the Constantine series. Even though it wasn't Netflix, it was on, I believe it was on NBC. Or Fox, one of those.
Yeah, I remember that was on TV. I remember, I never watched the show, but I know it was on TV.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Loved it. way too dark,
Mhm.
way too dark, and yeah, in general for normal broadcast TV. But it was fantastic. But yeah, a lot goes on because they felt like they needed to cram it in, and Neil Gaiman himself even said that just in case they don't opt for a second season, he wanted it to be able to be, left to this one season, have it be it, and then and then go his merry way, saying that hey, he was able to make it. He made it the way that he wanted it to.
Mm.
Because other versions, other of his shows, didn't work out that way. Namely, American Gods. If you haven't seen it, the first season's great, but then once they changed the showrunner, it went downhill very, very fast.
Okay, gotcha. So I mean that's fair on his part, especially like the fickleness of of the quote unquote network, right? Of that's going to be distributing them for however long or producing for them, right? I don't know how much of the story was covered just in the first season, but obviously they lead into more stuff in the next season because it was not looking like a cliffhanger per se, but but they
Right.
definitely showed interactions with him and other characters. Who was that? Desire.
Oh yes,
Yeah, like at
yes.
the end, I mean, we see a little bit of them in the middle of the show, and then towards the end, they're kind of like the jumping point from what it seems like for the next season. Like at least their interaction with Desire and Dream.
Yes, that is an important dichotomy, which hopefully we'll see a lot more pan out of it or a lot more developed in the hopefully seasons to come. Honestly, I really hope that they create the whole series. There was some jumping around, although I mean, a lot of things were necessary to front load. Like, okay, once again, spoiler alert.
Yeah,
If
we're just spoiler
for
alert for anyone who's listening. If you were intending to watch the show and don't want to get spoiled on anything at all, then yeah, go ahead and pause, go watch the show, then come back to this. If you're cool with some spoilers and still, just kind of like want to see afterwards how the events actually happen, that's cool. That's perfectly fine too.
Okay, thanks. Because yeah, just to put out there, like there was a bunch of jumping around. It was important, obviously, for he got captured, then he has to get his materials back,
Mm-hmm.
and that's probably that's the first arc.
Yeah,
So
that's
and
kind of
then
how I recognized it. It was like the first 4 or 5 episodes or so, right?
yep,
Yeah.
which kind of intermesh with other things too, which is interesting too. How they intermesh. That the motivation for that being that he has to catch the Corinthian, which is one of my favorite arcs too.
Mm-hmm.
One of my and really interesting character also. So actually, yeah, Lakan. That being said, which of those arcs would you say is your favorite, or which plot line would you say is your favorite?
I would probably say, the first half of the show, I think for me is stronger. Like episode
Yep.
1 through 5. That's what I was again. Even though it was very busy and I had a little bit of trouble following it. Episode 6 was really great. I loved episode 6. But
Yep.
when it switched over to the involvement of Rose and her being the vortex, it's one of those things where it's like when it's like we're having the issue right now with like Marvel, right? Where it's like it's going from a world-ending threat to like a universe-ending threat. You know what I mean? It's the jump. You know what I mean? It's coming from like a small localized incident to becoming worldwide threat. It was that took me a second to adjust to, because again, initially before it's like yes, they talk about the idea that like Dream's control over his realm and the loose nightmares can cause mayhem and pain and death and suffering upon the world, versus the world can be ended. You know what I mean? Like that going from
Yeah.
that smaller localized issue to the larger overall world ending issue is a pretty, not, to be fair, not a lot of shows also do that very well either. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like especially in the span of a season.
Oh yeah, I'm really surprised how they pulled it off, and how they pulled it off actually fairly well, because it could have been a cluster F at any given point, at any given time. Once again, that's where American Gods season 2 failed, and failed miserably, unfortunately. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Honestly, they probably could have just cut it at seasons at not season at episode 6, and would have been fine. Like, okay, this is great. But
Yeah,
once again, that's
it's
also
like
in
a
the
mini season arc kind of deal. You know, if it was like a
Mhm.
pilot season, that's how I could have seen it. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly. And that's the thing too, because they made it. such that in the event that this was the only season, there you are, here you go. Got some, got the major things. Sure, there could have been more, but and that also explains a lot of the cramming that you were mentioning too, which I definitely felt also, which goes in both ways because there's a lot of cramming because they want to tell as much of the story as they can within one season with the hopes, fingers crossed of there being a second, third, fourth, fifth, and possibly sixth season, that kind of thing. But also from the aspect too of like what you mentioned about Andor, how it felt like the world was lived in. Like think about this in terms of Dream and the Endless's world. Their world goes has gone, and they've existed for not even centuries but millennia since time began
Mm-hmm.
essentially. So obviously parts of that world will feel lived in and like a little too much lived in, kind of like like kind of like stains on the ceiling or that kind of thing. Certain things that you won't get out, and it just keeps on building and building and building. So you have all those layers occurring in the world all at once, and you're jumping into this world fresh, but you have all those layers already there that are interacting. So it sort of makes sense in that aspect, but also it makes it a little bit more difficult. And once again, if you got unga bunga brain going on, you know, you can need to help to wrap your mind around it. Which once again, we're also on a rush schedule for this particular because a bunch of things are going on in general in life for us in our world. In the fourth wall.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it would have been great if you had a couple weeks to watch it, ruminate over it, marinate, and then think about it, and maybe definitely go for a second watch. And yeah, listeners, if you have watched a show already, yeah, watch it again. Take your time, savor it. That's one great thing about books, comic books, and things like that is that they are meant to for you to consume it in not as much of a hurried fashion. But show wise, yeah, there is a lot going on, and
Yeah,
that's why.
it also felt weird because the fact that like I feel like we got introduced to certain characters and just don't see them again.
Yeah,
Like Constantine, you know what I mean? Like we have the 2 or 3 episode focus on her and then she kind of disappears again.
yeah,
Um
yeah, yeah.
like we see like
Um,
a little bit of her in episode 6, I believe, but that's like technically a different thing, right?
yeah,
It's like again they're trying they're obviously trying to cover a lot in a very small amount of time.
right.
Um but yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
I understand they're trying to again the fear of not getting a chance to expand more upon this and trying to cover like a very you know trying to have like a possible soft landing just in case the show doesn't get renewed for another season.
yeah,
But yeah, like I mean, again, like I think this is a show that would very much so benefit from a second watch or me going into the audio drama or going back and grabbing the comics, like a grabbing like a collection or something.
right, right. And yeah, if you don't want to go through the comics, because once again, the comics were made starting in 1989,
Mm.
so it does go back quite a ways, and it's dated. Um, yeah,
Is it
it's dated, and
the
then
the
the
the,
audiobook.
the comic
Go
doesn't
ahead.
hold the comic not hold up, or is it just like it just you can just kind of it's more of like a feel thing?
Huh? Really interesting.
Because like I
Um,
read old comics all the time, you know what I mean, and like yeah, they'll feel dated, but like they don't. But it's not like they don't hold up. You know what I mean? Like I read
right.
plenty. I read plenty of stuff like that.
It's good that you asked because I actually have to think about that pretty deeply. And you know what? Honestly, I'll have to go back and look. I mean, the artwork in some sense, but then again, we're talking about the original one, the original work or the canon. I believe is 76 comics, split up into I think it was maybe 10 or 12 volumes. So the artwork is there in one sense, but then it's also because they had to crank out one comic a week, so it might fail on that aspect. But yeah, I mean, that is a good question. Does it hold up?
Yeah,
I had to
because I
think
mean,
about that.
at least the way I see it is that like like most of the stuff that we see now, especially in like comic slash like comic media, right?
Hmm.
Um, the reason why they're being retold is because they hold up, right? But the thing
Right.
is, would it be one of those things where it's like, oh, I've watched this series, I find out it's a comic, and if I start reading the comic, will I be turned away from it? Because I know a lot of people don't like the old comic aesthetic.
Right.
That's all, and that's all personal preference, obviously. But the way I see it is that like because it's also a different time. It's right. It's 1989 was the original comic when it started.
Yep.
I mean, this is a Netflix show. We're talking 2023 standards. The show's super diverse. I don't know if the comic would have been the same way either. You know what I mean?
It actually was, and that's one of the reasons why Gaiman and Sandman have such a cult following. Because once again,
Mm.
like you said, in a lot of circles, a lot of people haven't talked about it. In terms of Neil Gaiman, a lot of people haven't talked about him. Although that's the kind of thing. Like that's the way that Neil Gaiman is. Like once you've heard of him, okay, you're like, oh, great, and then you kind of look for people who have been exposed to his stuff or fans, and his fan base is growing and increasing because of this kind of thing.
Mm.
But it's the kind of thing like if you know, if not, cool.
Okay.
Honestly, if I were to become a celebrity, I would love to have that level where like you can go shopping as opposed to like say you're Kobe Bryant, or LeBron.
Yeah, where you're just getting sworn no matter what you do. Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Because like I know the only thing I really know about gaming, I think like off the top of my head is like Coraline. Like I think that's all I can think of that like I recognize off the top of my head. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like if I recognize Gaiman from, like I know he's like big, but I wouldn't be able to recognize like any of his work right off the bat.
Right. And you saw the following. I mean, you saw how me, my sister, and maybe a handful of others like went bonkers over like, oh my gosh, it's happening. They're turning Sandman. Oh, Gaiman this. Like and having gone to Comic-Con, like that's one of the major things. Like if he's in a panel, I got to be there, or
Gotcha.
whatever he does. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, maybe one of those things that like again I did have to rush through the show a little bit, so I absolutely will give the show definitely a second pass over. Again, I'll probably look into the comic as well too, and I would. Well, yeah, I'm not super into audio dramas. Like I've listened to a couple. I'm not. It's not one of those things I listen to on a regular.
Right.
But I mean, you guys said it was good, so like you and your sister, so like I'll probably go check that out as well too at some point.
Oh yeah, it's well done, and that's the thing because once again, Sandman was a comic book. There's been a desert in terms of production, for years. Like honestly, the audio drama only came out maybe a few years ago.
Okay.
So yeah. But yeah, and speaking of Gaiman, Coraline probably is the best place to start because family friendly, still has his quirky, horror-y fantasy-ishness into it. My introduction to Neil Gaiman was actually Stardust, which is another great place to start off in terms of delving into Neil Gaiman. In terms of things that have actually been produced, those are probably some of the better examples. Once again, American Gods season 1, fantastic. Season 2, horrible. Good Omens is also a good place to check them out. So yeah. Didn't mean to completely divert into becoming a Neil Gaiman fanboy.
No, I mean you're clearly passionate about like his like you're a fan. You're clearly a fan. That's the whole point of the whole show, right? You're a fan of something. I don't really know a whole lot. You're kind of just the whole point of the show is to spread your love of something to somebody else, and hopefully more people like hear it and will go check it out for themselves as well too.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful thing, and that's what makes Lakan. That's what makes your podcast such a beautiful thing too. Because honestly, I think more people should do that. Because like this is something that I've been into. I'm deep into. You can tell by how excited I am talking about Neil Gaiman stuff. And then you haven't been as exposed to it, and for some people they haven't been exposed to it. But then like, hey, this is something I love. Check it out. Do you like it too? Cool. Let's talk about it. And that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of this kind of thing, and also the beauty of your podcast. So once again, Lakan, I'm honored to be a part of this thing that you're putting out into the world.
Yeah, of course. I'm glad to have you on, buddy. Yeah, because I think there's a lot of shows like that I listen to a lot of podcasts, and a lot of them are just like kind of dunking on things that you know what I mean. It's like
yeah.
Like, and of course they're not always doing that, right? But it's also like if I always feel like bummed out when I'm super into something that I check out an episode that I just hear them like shitting on the thing that I enjoy, and I was like, oh, that sucks. But I mean, it's again perfectly fine. Is their opinion? Not everyone has to like everything, right?
Right.
But I try to come into things relatively open minded. Which actually speaking of the whole open minded thing, there was a part of me when I was watching this show, with again I said before the cast was very like wide and diverse, right?
Yep.
I could probably tell there's a lot of people who wouldn't like this show just because of that exactly that. There's a lot of there's a lot of like a lot of like gender queer representation in this show. A lot of like just the homosexual representation in the show.
Yep.
Not sure if one's a trans character or not. I'm not exactly sure. But there's a lot of it here where there's a drag queen performance in here that's of one of the supporting characters shows up in the second half of the show, and I think a lot of people would be turned off by that. I mean, unfortunately, right?
Right.
But I mean, I think that's also like a thing that's like you have to kind of account for when you recommend stuff to other people, right?
Right.
Like I have a friend of mine who's a very big DC guy. He's a very big. He's just a big comic guy in general, right? But I don't think I don't think this would be anything up his alley, essentially, because of like how it's a lot more of those things where if you're like a holdout in terms of like your opinions and your again perfectly fine. Your thoughts are your thoughts.
Exactly.
But it's like I feel like a lot of people unfortunately would have not come across the show or if they started getting to a certain point, they'd be like, this is not for me type of thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I think I think overall story wise, it's very much so. I've played video games that have the similar ideas to this story, right? Where it's like you're a powerful the main character is a powerful deity or a powerful person in general, right? Everything gets stripped away from them. They have to claw it back, right? I get a lot of this stuff in video games, but it's cool kind of just being in the back seats, kind of watching everything go by and just kind of see how they develop as a character as well too. And that being said, there's also bits in the show that where I feel like it bothers me because like not in the sense of like it bothers me that I didn't like it, but it's like it bothers me that like I'm assuming there's probably more in the comics, but there's more character development, I'm assuming, down the line, because like Dream is such an insufferable bastard sometimes.
Yeah,
like he's true. Such a fucking baby. like he's a stubborn asshole, right? Like I understand like being the this the endless, right? Or being an endless and being super powerful and all this other shit. But the fact that like he refuses help from Lucian or any sort of assistant, or and basically like him thinking that he knows better than everybody else is like, you are such a piece of shit, and I want to see you fucking you're the main character. I'm like, I know I want you to to fucking fix things, but like fucking hell, you're a pain in the ass, dude.
Yeah. Oh no. And that's actually
Dream is played by Tom Sturridge, by the way.
I'm
going to cover a little bit of like just I guess just a little bit of extra details here. Dream is the main character of the show. He's played by Tom Sturridge, who is a fantastic actor. I enjoyed him very much in the show. But he's like, damn it, he's good at playing a fucking asshole.
Yeah, he's surprisingly good, right?
Yeah, like Dream is. Again, his voice and his accent make everything feel super fancy as well too. But again, he just seems like a fucking brat sometimes, and it's like, but we see him developing a little bit, see a little bit of warmth coming from his character. But for the most part, he seems very like cold and calculated for the most part of the show. Yep. And it's like, God damn it, I want you to be better. You know what I mean? I just want you to be a better. So that said, I don't hate you as a main character, because if I have to watch another season of you being a fucking little pissy baby, I'm not going to watch this show, or I'm going to be very annoyed watching this show and enjoying more of the people around him.
Yeah. Which is something to be said, kind of like Seinfeld. Like, when I was watching Seinfeld, was he my favorite character? No. Like, it's the characters that are around him that really bring life to it, and he's kind of just like the set piece that brings them together.
Mm-hmm.
But it is nice to see that character development in Dream, where he becomes less of an a-hole towards the end.
Yeah, like we see like small hints at it, right? During what is it, episode 3? Yeah, when he retrieves the sand from with the assistance of Constantine.
Yep.
Where he gets the sand back from Rachel, Constantine's ex-girlfriend.
Yep.
And he lays her to rest, essentially, with at least in peace, right? That's how that interaction goes anyway. And it's like, okay, cool. We see a little bit of like, not humanity, because he's obviously not a human, but you know what I mean? But like a little bit of compassion and a little bit of just emotion actually coming from the character. You know what I mean? Because I understand, obviously, like he's been in prison for 100 something years, right? I get it. He's fucking angry at humanity. I get that.
Yeah.
And it's very spiteful. But the thing is, again, I think it's because like the show is so, the time frame of the show is so strange in the beginning, because of the fact that he's essentially locked away for 100 years in the first episode. It's like my scale of time is very different as well. My understanding of the scale of time is very different because of it. That's why that's all leads kind of into the pacing issues that I was kind of having with the show early on.
Agreed. Like they could have stretched it out to maybe, I wouldn't say 12 episodes because it's 11. But yeah.
Here's the thing, because the 11th episode is like an hour long, and it's like it almost feels completely separate from the rest of the show. So it probably they could have had like a proper 12 episode run. You know what I mean? Like that last episode was a little bit weird to me. But I mean, it was I enjoyed it, but it was so strange that like they could have stretched out a little bit of, you know, the first half of the episode to a proper, or first half of the series to a proper 6 episodes, and would have probably given a little bit more time to breathe. Yes. And so I'm not getting slammed with everything, and then my understanding of time passing is very screwed up because of it.
Right. Nope, totally agree. And I mean, granted, you know, the season's actually 10 episodes plus 1, so it's 10 plus a bottle episode.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, that being said, there was a episode right in the middle, episode 6, The Sound of Her Wings, where it's right after the culmination of the first 5 episodes, where he retrieves all of his possessions and kind of like stops the I guess the first people who were, I guess, trying to fight against them, I guess. Mm-hmm. I don't know how else to explain it. The people who stole from him, or stole from the people who stole from him, kind of deal. Like he's basically trying to get all his shit back together, and then go after Constantine. But like, episode 6 legitimately felt like a complete out of nowhere to me, where it's like, not that it felt unnecessary, because I definitely was a show that helped endear Morpheus a little bit more, right? You get to see his interactions with his sister Death, who is played by
Kirby Howell-Baptiste, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Kirby Howell-Baptiste. You know, again, get to see a little bit more of him being more compassionate, and you know, we get to actually see him like have a friend in that episode. That was a nice. I mean, that was a nice little thing. I enjoyed the episode, but it just felt so out of nowhere.
Right.
But that,
and I think that's intentional, actually.
I mean, maybe because I'm looking at the episodes, or the books that it's adapted from, or the issue that it's adapted from, is they basically go in order from what it looks like. I'm on the wiki just looking stuff up for reference as well as my notes. But yeah, we get to see a little bit more, again, more compassion, and just a little bit of like a little bit of levity from the heaviness of the first 5 episodes, right? Like, you know, episode what is it? Episode 4 is pretty rough, right? And then episode 5 is super heavy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like it's like, you know, the show overall, again, the tone of the show is very dark, very neo goth, I guess, if I can try to coin a term here, right?
Yeah.
Again, emo high school me would have loved this shit. But it's like, you know, again, like I assume the show is going to be much darker themed overall. Like you can kind of tell from just the early the lead in of the show, the intro, the way that the narration goes right off the bat. I assume it was going to be dark, and obviously the show tells you it's meant for adults, right? But
right.
It's like I needed more moments of levity in the beginning as well too, right? And I think that's why episode 6 was kind of nice. Again, it felt out of nowhere, but it was nice, because again, I needed a fucking breather from the, you know, just my fucking emotions getting just fucking mushed down for the last 5 episodes.
Yes. And then that's why I'm saying episode 6 was intentional, and actually episode 6 is one of my favorites, because, you know, episode 6 is that it's the nice scenic rest stop on the turnpike of Sandman, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And it's intentional too, because, you know, it also marks that boundary between, you know, this is the first, you know, the end of the first arc. He got all this stuff. He got revenge on a whole bunch of people. You know, got his thing. So, you know, it's kind of time to, you know, take a stop, you know, kind of let your feet dangle for a bit, introduce you once again, make him more human. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I do like episode 6, also because, you know, Death is one of my favorites in the
in the series, both in terms of the comic books and also in terms of the show. And Death actually has her own little arc in terms of the comics. I do hope they make something out of it.
Yeah, it'd be cool. It'd be cool. Again, I probably should check out the comic afterwards. But yeah, I mean, like, so after the first arc finishes, that again, that episode, the kind of resting point episode. Again, it was good to see the interaction between Morpheus and Hob. You know, that kind of
Yes.
little bet that they have about, like, you know, do you want to live forever type of deal.
Mhm.
It was a cool episode. I like the fact that they kind of go through the times, right? Every 100 years goes by, they come back to the same spot and meet again and converse and see if he still wants to, Hob wants to continue on living, right? And
Yeah.
it's cool seeing that optimism from Hob, right? Even though he's obviously
Yeah.
dealing with the shit of the time, right? Every 100 years, and he's going through, like, was it the 1400s, 1500s, 1600s, I think, where they started. But yeah, he always comes up to, like, yeah, but there's so much to see. There's so much to this human experience that
Mhm.
I've yet to explore, and it was cool to see Morpheus kind of opening up to the idea of that. And then we see him being a fucking baby once Hob, says, "Hey, are you sure you don't just meet up because I'm your friend?" And he's like, I'm an endless. I don't make friends with humans. Fuck off, dude." Just walks out. And it's like, God, you're a piece of shit.
Yeah, and I would have appreciated more if he didn't do that.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess because once again, it's season one. They were hoping for more seasons. They didn't want to put all of the character development in one season, especially like have him turn around completely in the middle of the season. Like, yeah, okay, I could understand that, but yeah, it's like, come on, like, get over yourself, dude. Like, you've had millennia to just not be a jerk.
yeah.
Yeah.
There was and again, like, at least at the end of it, they reunite. You know what I mean? They're like, you know,
Mhm.
he acknowledges that Hob is a friend, which is very, very sweet of him.
Yeah.
We get to see a fucking glimmer of hope for him not being a piece of shit anymore.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, definitely.
I mean, he's not exactly a piece of shit, but you know what I mean. Like, he's such a fucking broody character. That's like, we get it. You know what I mean? Like, we get it. You're fucking all powerful and all this other shit, but, like, come on, like, you clearly are enjoying yourself. Don't be afraid to admit it.
Exactly.
And the thing is, we still
Exactly.
get more of that later on down the line too, where he is very much so, like, very self-important, right? Like,
Mhm.
when he starts to interact with Rose being the vortex and saying, like, this is all for the greater good without even considering anything else, right? He's
Right.
very much so, like, calculated about, everything has to be done for this reason. He understands the rules and all this other stuff. And that's one of the things I think I want to cover, I guess, in the beginning of this show as altogether. The fact that, like, obviously the world building has to be crammed in. I get that, but
Right.
I had to do a lot of, like, mental gymnastics to, like, understand what the rules are of this world. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
they touch on it later on, especially in the last main of the regular episodes, where he confronts Desire about,
Mhm.
and he says, like, possibly spilling the blood of family, or of spilling the blood of Endless, or whatever it was. I
Mhm.
forgot exactly what he said, but it's like, oh, okay, so that's a big no. You know what I mean? Okay, so, like, I said that, like, latch onto that and just remember that in the back of my head. And, now I have to remember that as well going forward into the rest of the story. So, like, I had to do a lot of, like, trying to piece together how everything plays in this show, which again could be an issue because of the fact that of the short season they were allowed.
Mhm.
But yeah, if you're not, like, actively paying attention, show's a little bit hard to follow.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, that's when remember when we were talking, like, oh, what should I pitch to you? And, like, I was actually reserved about saying that because there is a ton of things that you do have to keep in mind. I
And
was
I'm
also
done.
reserved in terms of, like, can you binge this? I don't know. Like, it's, each episode has its own weight and, a certain amount that you need to ruminate about. And props for getting through it in less than a week. Because, yeah, like, it would have been good if you had even a month to watch it. But you know, as it is, and that's also why I was wondering if you would like it. Like, I know you would definitely like the themes. I know you would definitely like a lot of the direction that it took, but I didn't know if you would appreciate how, like how much density there just
Yeah.
is to to Sandman.
Yeah, again, it was fun for the most part. I just couldn't turn my brain off while watching the show. You know what I mean? This is absolutely like an active watch for me. Even though I was watching it at work, I watched like a couple episodes while I was working, but
Shout out to your coworkers.
yeah, for not ratting me out. But yeah, it's like there's a lot going on. I would like to do a second pass of the show. Again, audio drama, comic, maybe down the line I'll probably snag those as well too, or at least listen to them. But yeah, I mean, again, obviously not a bad experience. Again, I did enjoy the show overall. I have a couple of things I want to cover over here, I guess. Let me read through my notes real quick, because I know you have some other questions, but let me bang through a couple of notes real quick before, just in case I don't know if you touch on them.
Bang away.
Okay,
and listeners, keep banging if you're banging.
I have no context in regards to the original source material. I think we covered that in the first half, where again I didn't even realize this was a comic book. I assumed it was a book. First comment on like what Morpheus was like, very self-obsessed and stubborn, very high and mighty, right, of himself. But that being said, he does seem very capable, and that isn't against handling things himself, right? Like his first one of his early interactions with Lucien was like, he's like, no, I'll take care of it myself, right? Like he basically had to go after Corinthian early on.
Yep.
It's like, okay, so he's very capable. That's good for a main character of the show, and then obviously he gets trapped and locked away for 100 years and becomes a broody asshole. Early on, he seemed to have like felt slighted. Everyone in the room had dipped out, right? But just like Lucien had to make it a point that he had been away for 100 years, like again, very, very self-important. It's like, why would they leave? Like, I'm going to come back. You know what I mean? It's like, well, yeah, but you say that, but not everyone else knew that. You know what I mean? At least, like,
right, like they didn't know.
In universe, they're not going to know. They just assumed he disappeared. Oh yeah, so Dream created everything / everyone within his realm. Is that basically what it is?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, including Lucien.
I believe so. Yeah, Lucien. Which is interesting that you bring it up, because Lucien used to be Lucian. In the comic books, he's it's a guy.
Okay.
But yeah, no. I believe so. I believe everything in the Dreaming was created by Dream.
Okay. Yeah, because they acknowledge it later on down the line is like, again, him being lonely, right? If maybe that's why he's filling his realm so much. Which I appreciate that was touched upon later on down the line. Katie and Abel are great. I like their interactions.
Yep.
Yeah, that was very fun.
Once again, the levity that you're referring to, because like if you didn't have things like that and have it just dark all the time,
it gets heavy and like dragged down real quick if you don't have it.
Yeah. Totally.
Constantine, like, as much as he's a bad guy, he's good. That I don't know who is that guy or Constantine the Corinthian.
The Corinthian.
Well, I mean, Constantine is also dope too, because her episode was pretty fun. She's also
cute as hell.
Yeah, she's just a capable badass, which is great. But what's it? Corinthian. Boyd Holbrook. Yeah, he's great. Yeah. I don't know what else he's been in, but I'm assuming he's been in a bunch of stuff.
I didn't even know, and that was one of my things too, because the Corinthian is, once again, a major character, and I was wondering who would play him. Boyd Holbrook, never heard of him before, but he did quite well.
I see he was in Narcos. My parents watched Narcos. I never caught it myself.
Oh, I hear great things about Narcos. That's another one on my, infinite backlog.
Yeah. He like the Corinthian's a cool character. Just the fact that he's like, he's threatening without being like overtly threatening all the time. You know what I mean? You just feel like he has shit planned. If you give him the chance to, he'll take that chance.
Yep.
Yeah, dope character. Patton Oswalt as Matthew the Raven.
Hell yeah!
I heard the voice. I was like, "Is that fucking Patton Oswalt?" Like, I'm literally watching it at work. I'm like, I had to like stop what I was doing for a second and like look it up. I was like, that sounds like Patton Oswalt. Like, I love Patton Oswalt as a comedian, very funny dude. And yeah, I was like, oh shit, he's Matthew the Raven. It's cool.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, the first person to get casted for the show.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
They just knew that they wanted him as a Raven.
I think so. They knew they wanted someone who would be able to, that did have a comic background, that would be able to handle it, and someone who was also a voice actor. So
Okay.
yeah.
I mean, to be fair, like again, a lot of his dialogue as well too is like not super like while it is like kind of lighter, a little bit more levity to his voice again because his voice is like comedic, right?
Right.
But he can absolutely act too. That's the nice thing about Patton Oswalt. Like he absolutely can like handle some more, especially when he had some more serious lines and explaining stuff. And I was like, okay, good. He's able to keep up with everybody else here, even if you can't see him, you can only really hear him.
Yeah. Which is great too, because it shows that the cat. I would say the casting's on point.
Let's see here, how they twisted John, the villain of the first arc, I guess.
Yep, John D.
Yeah, John D.
Played by David Thewlis.
Yeah,
yep.
David Thewlis. That one I recognized right off the bat. I was like, oh, cool. Like I actually know this person. Yeah, like I was like, it was very quick. No, at least not very quick. Because obviously a lot of time has passed, right? But like, the way they did it, I kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Like the fact that like it was like, okay, it's just like lies, like that's the thing that like he like his search for truth, I guess, or whatever, right? And like no one would lie anymore. That would create a perfect world. And I was like, little quick to twist the character like that. But I mean, obviously he's twisted already to begin with because of his relationship with his mother.
Right. Agreed.
Just the way, again, the show I think needed one more episode to let things breathe in the first half. Basically, that's like my biggest complaint in the first half. Let it be a proper 6. Let it be a proper 6 and 6. I think that's probably that would have been better overall.
Agreed. Very much agreed.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, Morpheus can be kind. Again, we talked about it in episode 3. He has a moment of like kindness showing through him, and then in episode 4, during that like some sort of challenge with Lucifer. Yep. Yeah, like hope. You using hope as like a trump card kind of deal. I was like, okay, cool. So he understands that like I guess the way he thinks of it is like he still thinks that, or he understands that humanity has to live, right? Like that's his whole thing. Like they don't exist without humanity. Humanity doesn't exist without them as well too. But it's like at least he has that like understanding that like hope is like a powerful force that can support humanity through anything.
Right.
Yeah. Again, you can see that he can be kind even after being locked away for 100 years.
Even after being a brooding dick for millennia.
Exactly. Yeah. That being said, also, actually speaking with Lucifer, that was a cool depiction of Lucifer.
Right.
That was played by who was that?
Gwendolyn Christie from Game of Thrones.
No idea because I never watched Game of Thrones.
Maybe I should have pitched that one.
But she was cool. It was a cool portrayal. She has a very like kind face. And obviously it was done on purpose, right? She's her face is like, like very fair. She has the white, she has the very like light hair, right? And then just that in hard contrast with hell, just hell. I was like, this is
with who she is.
I was like, that's a fantastic depiction. Aside from her being like extremely tall, right? But like a soft-spoken, kind-faced woman with a dichotomy of her being the ruler of hell is great. Like I really enjoyed that. But then when she gets like once she starts, dealing with the actual battle with Dream, her kind of, you can see this like, just, I mean, she's acting her ass off, right? She's like this, this bubbling evil underneath. I was like, oh, great! Like, this is really, really cool. Also, some cool visuals during that one too, where like they do like I mean, like a lot of shows can technically do this, but like when they do the hard image change of the characters. Like they change into their battle garb, like moving off screen, and then the next cut they're in their like battle garb. Yeah. Also, when Dream meets his former lover, I guess was that what the other character was inside in that tower?
Yep, correct.
Yeah. So like that was a hard cut out. It confused me for a second, and then it took me a second to process it afterwards. Yeah, that was a really cool thing I want to focus on, especially in episode 4. That was a really, really interesting portrayal there. We mentioned 5 is super heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
just brutal, honestly. Watching John try to essentially start carving the world around him. And then everyone just starts killing each other. Tears apart the thin veil of civility and humanity from people, basically. Yeah, very heavy. And again, episode 6 is like the much needed palate cleanser after that, basically.
Yes. Once again, the rest up on the turnpike of the show.
Yeah. That being said, also, Death, Kirby Howell Baptiste, she's really pretty. I that's like the first thing that I caught right off the bat when I saw her. I was like, oh, she's hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Very attractive, and again, also just very kind. That's a cool way to go about personifying, the character of Death. Like, very, like, and just the way she talked about it, and her lines and her monologues during that bit too, also very, very nice.
Right. Which is a nice change of like the Grim Reaper view of Death being cold and heartless. You have this very warm version of Death. So yeah.
And then we get to the second half of the series of this season, right, where hard cut to Rose Walker and Jed storyline.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which is like obviously, like I'm not stupid. I know they're clearly setting up something else, but the whole vortex thing can, like, again, that's the whole thing. Like the ramping up threw me off during this particular section. And then once they kind of localized it back into on Earth, is where I started being able to like keep up and catch on a little bit more again and get drawn back into the story.
Right.
The serial killer convention is that's just a funny idea to me. Like, there's a convention for serial killers.
Yep. Yeah.
But yeah, like, so like, and that they kind of play around that whole thing, right? And then they have this other like big old cast of characters in the house that they stay at in Florida, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we start to see the breaking down of the walls between dreams and reality, which is, again, cool concept. I just wish it had an extra episode to breathe, just because it felt so.
Rushed.
Again, the scale just it was too fast. Basically, that's like again my complaint about. I guess that's my main complaint about the show. I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of like somebody visiting Manhattan for a day. Like, no, you can't.
Yeah, you can't cram. Again, there's a lot of story that goes into this, clearly, right? But it just felt like I felt like I'm missing a lot. That being said, from what I'm seeing from reviews, it's very faithful. So I guess I'm not missing a whole lot. I guess I'm just missing a lot of like finer, small details, and it's allowing myself to go at a slower pace.
You're also missing, and it's also, like you said, the pacing, because a lot of these things were occupied a bunch of episodes of the comic book. So yeah, it was much more paced there. So
yeah. I mean, I guess that's kind of, let me see. Oh, here, yeah, the moments where humor is in the show really shine through. Like, again, the show is very dark, right? There's a dark overall tone, but the moments of levity are very, very welcomed. Like episode 9, again, it's absurd, right? The whole thing is, again, it's setting up the whole convention of fucking serial killers, and it's just like so funny to me that they have to talk in kind of like a light code so they don't out themselves. Very, very amusing to me. Like, again, just like it's I'm not sure if it's meant to be humorous, I guess, in that way, but like acknowledging the absurdity of it obviously is enjoyable. That's why I liked it. I found it funny myself.
Yep, and that's what makes it work super well.
Because it's weird because it plays itself straight, right? That's it has to. It's weird because, again, it's more localized, so maybe that's why I can feel more like grounded, if I can call it that, I guess, right? It's not talking about the lofty ideals of realms and stuff like that,
right?
But yeah, like the humor there was great for me. I really, you kind of just needed this, and that's the whole point too, right? With drama and comedy, right? It has to kind of like interplay with each other,
right? Because it easily could be just dark and just heavy all the time, easy. But yeah, it's nice, and that's one of the great things about it.
Yeah, and when things are funny, not because they're making a gag out of it, right, are I think more enjoyable for me than when it's overtly trying to be a gag, right? Like
Right.
like when Rose was meeting everybody for the first time and everyone's a weird character type of thing. It's like, okay, yeah, haha, Barbie and Ken, you know what I mean? The two goth sisters.
Hmm.
And then like what's the house owner's name again?
Oh gosh, I forgot.
I forgot his name.
Yeah.
But the drag queen guy, like, you know, her going to the show, and like it was just a hard cut into it. It's like, what the fuck is happening? What, like, you know, why is gypsy music playing right off the bat? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, which, you know, again, funny in the moment, but it's also like it felt more forced, I guess, to me,
Hmm.
because of the fact that like we go from just the other serial killers having a conversation, like, again, that's coded, which is funny in the fact that they're playing it so straight, versus that which felt more of not a gag, because it obviously wasn't meant to be like a jab at drag shows or anything. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? It's like it was a weird hard cut to me that I felt didn't play off as well as the other bit.
Right. 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 But I mean, and it seem forced though to you?
Like, not forced, but it felt like it came out of nowhere, that it like it kind of, if anything, it just kind of derailed me. Like, I actually like got thrown off, like, what the hell am I watching? You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, was it
Got
like,
it.
I don't know if, like, and then the question, and then also questioning, like, again, in broader context of like the show and the comic, is like, was this in the comic? I'm assuming not. Like, so
It was.
it
Yeah.
was.
Because yeah.
Huh.
And interesting, and you know, going back to something we were talking about before, how you know you said like there are definitely some aspects of it now that are progressive, and that's one of the reasons why people got into it back then, because you know Sandman and some of the other things were kind of a creative safe haven for you know for people you know who are into those kind of things, you know, back in a time when it wasn't acceptable.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess now with more context to it, I guess. But yeah, cool. Like, you know, again, I was just it just threw me off. That's basically what it was. Is like, is because again, the colorful classic character is perfectly fine and all that other stuff, but I guess I just wasn't expecting it, and that's like why it felt like maybe it didn't feel as natural as everything else did.
No, totally understandable. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's and it's not like it was like a one off. You know, this was pigeonholed in here. You know, just to you know just for that part's sake, because it does you know occupy part of the story.
Yeah, and that's that character. Like that. Like that's the whole point, right? It's like that's their dream. Like that's their dream was to be a Broadway performer, and you know, and we see that happen later on down the line when Rose is in accidentally stumbling into other people's dreams, and we see them kind of like, what the hell's happening? Why are you here? Type of thing, you know.
Hmm.
Which, you know, again, I think also that's where I had the first couple moments where I saw the CGI was really starting to like throw me off as well too. I think what took me a little bit out of it as well too.
Yeah, yeah. CJ can only do so much.
Yeah. Again, like overall the production is very great. But there were definitely moments where it felt like I was watching a green screen.
Yep.
Like
Yep. Agreed.
I mean, to be fair, most shows are CGI'd, right? But I'm saying like this is one of those moments where that the my experience was that like I'm losing I'm no longer losing myself in the show because the background's taking me out of it.
Yes. 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 Agreed. Which I mean, then again, you know, does that help? Because you know, because think about it, you know, you're talking about the dreaming or you know a dream world, or is it just you know just falling through because it's you know B or C grade?
Yeah, I don't.
I would say the first one more. Yeah.
Yeah, probably because again, overall the show looks really really good, and they did a good job with a lot of the demons, right?
Hmm.
But like, yeah, like I think a lot of the scenery especially with when the CGI is like a lot of scenery, you start, you know, again, if you're not, I don't know, I had a little bit more trouble buying in the second half of the CGI overall, which is funny because I was literally looking at a fucking dream realm in the fucking first half of the show, and I was like, yeah, I'm in.
Yeah.
But once it starts going to dreams and cutting it, well, that being said, like the later episode, was it episode 9 or episode 10, when she's going to the dream with the serial killers, I think that's more practical, so like it looked better overall.
Right.
right?
Right.
She would go from room to room, which was showing the different serial killers' dreams, which made it not feel as fake. If I can say that, I guess I'm
Yeah,
not
no,
I'm not
makes
good with
total
words.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of covered most of the show here. Story, at least story wise, right? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Then the 11th episode, which was completely caught me off because I was first half of it is animated. And it's just not talking cats, but like the inner thinkings of cats. Also dark, not like the drowning the kittens. I was like, excuse me.
Yeah.
Which I guess also explains to me as a person where I felt more upset that he drowned kittens than I felt about other people just fucking dying in a show. I don't know if this says more about me or not.
No, but it definitely puts things into context, right?
Yeah. But then also seeing the fact that like Morpheus also is not just dealing with humans, right? He's literally the embodiment of dreams, not just in human form. Anything that dreams, he is in service of, essentially.
Yes.
Which,
yes.
That's a nice little bit of storytelling that I think was that I was able to pick up in that part of the episode. And then the last bit with Calliope, the Greek muse.
Yeah. This is one of those episodes that if you haven't been triggered yet, this definitely might trigger.
Yeah,
some people,
rough. This is a rough episode. Rough episode.
Yeah.
A rough half of the episode. Dark, very dark. The fact that basically just by not going to use that word because that will just get me knocked off this platform. By non-consensualizing with Calliope, that's how they receive inspiration. Heavy. And also seeing the fact that like she has a backstory and a history with Morpheus as well too.
Mm-hmm.
So like here's another thing that actually I kind of caught on throughout the show as well too. So they talk about Lucifer, heaven and hell, right? Multiple characters talk about it, and then obviously another the realms of like I guess human emotion, I guess, right? That's the desire, despair, dreams, right? All them. So they cover like Christianity and then Greek Catholicism as well. Is it all kind of in this universe?
Oh, there's even more. Actually, one of my favorite issues in the comics deals with African mythology and folk tales and folk telling. So yeah. I mean, hopefully we're strapped in for a great ride moving forward in the seasons to come. And hopefully there'll be seasons to come. Hopefully Netflix doesn't become Netflix.
Yeah, I mean, like again, I mean, even if it isn't, like I'm interested to the point where I probably am most likely going to pick up the comics as well myself for some more expansion and reading.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like I said, and there you go. Imagine that too, like all of this being told in the show, tons of depth, tons of density, but then, being told in a comic book that was not even years ago, decades ago.
Yeah.
That's also why it was thought to be, unfilmable.
Mm. Yeah, the fact that this was a comic then had to be 30 years later down the line had to be adapted in live action. Kind of wild.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah.
So yeah, since we did talk about the episodes, one of my other major questions was, did you have a favorite episode?
6 because I needed it. Again, the much lighter episode with death and seeing Morpheus's not humanity, but like his kindness show through. Very very much so needed after the heaviness of episode 5. That being said, episode 5 also looked very good. I like the way they styled it. But 6 was just nicer. Just everything was bright and happy for the most part, and at least felt more natural. I guess there's another thing. Right? I think in episode 6 there wasn't a lot of CGI going on, so it was a lot of just kind of like being in it for that episode. I don't know if that's gonna be a weird disagreement point for a lot of people who watch the show or not.
I don't know. I mean, because once again, it is pretty faithful. Although, a lot of the story that happens between Dream and Hob, occurs in you'll see it in snippets of issues of the comic. So it was nice to have that, put together.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah, 6 was really good. I think probably that, and yeah, I want to say that and maybe episode 10 are probably like my 2 favorite episodes of the series.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and it's funny because I think if they changed the cats one to dogs, I think that would have bumped it up for you.
Maybe. I mean, I like cats. I'm just allergic to them.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, it
I
was,
feel you on that.
but yeah, I think 6 as like as a palate cleanser episode was very nice. I very much so enjoyed it, and then 10 as like watching the dominoes fall down. You know what I mean? Like watching
Yes.
the culmination of everything happen was like very enjoyable, even though that was also a breakneck speed episode.
Yeah. That one could have been split into 2 episodes, and it actually might have felt better.
Yeah, and that being said, 10 was a good episode. Like I really enjoyed 10.
Right? Like, and that's the thing. Like, they're good. It's not like, this episode really blew, donkey balls.
No, again, just the entire series just needed a little more time to breathe. That's basically like my overall thoughts, I think, of the like what the show needed.
Yes.
Yeah, but
And one of the great things is having that time to breathe. You watch it and then you talk about it with other people, and that also helps it breathe and also breathe life into it more.
yeah, absolutely. I think that like if I was watching this with you guys, like with you and your sister, I don't know if any of your other friends in our circles watch this show, but I think it would have been nice to have somebody to to. Again, I'm dumb. Certain concepts may just straight up fly over my head, and I may have like not caught it on a first watch type of deal. So it's nice to have the conversation to expand and possibly see if I missed something in the first place. I think it would have been nicer if I was able to watch this with you guys, like alongside you guys.
Yeah, I would say, I would appreciate that. And yeah, listeners, if you are watching the show, kind of pull someone in who has either seen it or watch it alongside with them, and bounce stuff off them. As a matter of fact, it's kind of funny because that's actually one of the things I felt about watching Napoleon Dynamite. Like the first time I watched Napoleon Dynamite, saw it by myself, watched it alone, and then I'm like, I wasted an hour and change of my life. I hated it so much. But then talking with other people about it, now I'm like, oh, now I actually like it. Like it's so quirky that you really need. It's a community thing,
Mm-hmm.
it's a Napoleon Dynamite's a social movie, and it works similarly with Sandman. Although like I said, didn't dislike Sandman, but it definitely adds to it talking with other people about it.
Yeah. I think this is like more of like not a group watch, but I think you need people to talk about the show with. Like it'd be good to it. Or what I will probably be doing afterwards is like going into the wiki and reading more stuff about it. It's one of those that immediately after I finished the show, I was like, I need to start researching now. You know what I mean? That's how I felt about it.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's what I loved about it too. And yeah, and then read the comics, see where the changes were. That's something. And as a matter of fact, let's go into that because that's one of some of the things I did want to talk to you about because as you mentioned, it was made now. Comics were made decades ago. Some things were changed, including some of the characterizations. Like big one is death. When the comics were made, it was made when goth was, not to say that it's not a thing now, but was even more of a subculture, and it was in that way. So it went from being a typical goth person, meaning very, very pale, Caucasian person, to someone who's African American, or I don't know if she's African American, but she's definitely African. So would you say that
Well, yes,
you noticed that change? Would you have known if you didn't know about it?
No, I honestly wouldn't have. Like again, I didn't realize death was at least I never even saw a picture of death in the comics until I like went to the wiki afterwards. But yeah, no, that's the thing I think is a good thing about stuff that is written like this, where things aren't necessarily hard coded to have a specific race or gender in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Where that allows for much more flexibility in the show. But yeah, I didn't know, like, again, like Lucien, right? I was like, okay, like I wouldn't have thought anything of it until you brought it up. Actually, like I honestly I didn't even realize Lucien was the original character.
Yep.
So,
but
yeah, like, a lot of the characters here, like I wouldn't have realized. But I did think of some characters where I'm like, Desire, right? So that
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's meant to be like a not ambiguous character, right? But like, you know,
Androgynous.
androgynous.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for. Because when I saw Desire, I thought immediately of him from Powerpuff
Mhm.
Girls.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, so I'm like, I don't know if that's meant to be. I'm sure it's done intentionally, right? Or at least in regards to the show, right? But I don't know if
Mhm.
that's what they were. That was the original purpose in the comics or the audiobook.
Yes, that is intentional.
Okay,
Desire
cool.
is meant to be gender fluid.
Character.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, because these are embodiments of of ideas. You know what I mean? So like that's why for the most part in my mind it was like it doesn't matter who, like, what race or gender the character ended up being in the show.
Mhm.
But I think like I definitely had to think. I was like, I wonder if, because again we talked about this. We talked about it a little bit offline where the comic was done much earlier. So I was like, I don't know if this would have flown back then. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I mean, it's the '90s, so it probably it easily could have. But you know what I mean? But I was like, I don't know if they would have been like pushed back in the first place.
Definitely is a subculture, and once again,
Yeah.
kind of like anything that people like you kind of want to, like, oh, this is my thing. It works within the subculture. It might not be, friends, or friend, like something that's meant for to be consumed by a larger populace. But yeah, and that's one thing that worked out well, and actually, hit at the right time back then, and even now, I would say, yeah.
Yeah, like I again, like any of the characters, especially in the second half, I think they could have been played by anybody. Like I don't know if Rose was meant to be a young black female character. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if that was meant to be the case or not. Or well, the serial killers I guess aren't big enough, I guess, to have a focus on except for the Corinthian.
Right.
But like, yeah, like you know what I mean. But like anybody else in the second half is like or like the kooky cast at the house. You know what I mean? I'm not sure if anyone else there had to be hard coded for anything else as well either. You know what I mean? I'm not sure if the Ken and Barbie thing was a gag from the comic or was done for the show.
Yeah, from the comic. Yeah.
Okay, so there we go. Yeah. Again, for the most part, I tried to come at it with an open mind. I didn't have any context from the original source material, so I was like, okay, this is just how it is. That's kind of how I approach the show.
Yeah, and it's a good approach too, because once again, I'd say some of the biggest backlash I was hearing when the show was being made was the casting of Kirby Howell Baptiste as Death. Some people are like, oh, how dare you? Because Death should be pasty goth based off of this one actual
depiction.
I think she was a rocker back in the day.
Okay.
Yeah, and people are like, how dare you do that? But then I'm like, I don't know.
I don't know. I thought she was cool and she's pretty.
Yeah,
so
me
like,
too.
she's like hot. So like, I'm cool with it.
Yeah. And actually, that being said, if you do like Kirby Howell Baptiste, check out The Good Place. She plays
I've heard she's in the show, right?
there.
Yeah, I knew I recognized her from something, but I couldn't put my finger on it.
Yeah, definitely appreciated. So that being said, I'd say actually, honestly, my only real last question to you is, any favorite characters or characters that really resonated with you? Like, if you were one of the characters here, who would you say you are?
Who would I be?
Yeah.
Okay. High school me would have said Death, or not Death, Dream, because again, emo, fucking,
Oh, bangs all the way to your chin.
Yeah, like emo main character syndrome. You know what I mean? That was me in high school. But I think, if I could see myself embodying as a character, I like to see myself as a Fiddler's Green type of character.
Yep.
Kind of like
say that.
I try to be a helping hand. Kind of try to be a nice guy when when I'm not an asshole. But again, it's kind of like like something along those lines of just being like kind of like a person you meet along the way, but you're like, oh, that was a nice thing. You know what I mean? That's how I try to embody, how I try to live.
Because interesting, because it's good that you said that, because I see you both as that, and also as like a little bit Matthew the Raven.
Oh, kind of like a guy trying to help out, but may not be as useful as you initially think.
or in cases more useful than you think, and also having that like that sense of humor. So yeah.
No, that's fair. Yeah, word. That's cool. I'll take that compliment gladly. Yeah, yeah,
Totally meant.
I guess if I could relate to a character, I guess that's what it would be. But also, yeah, Phyllis Green was probably one of my favorite characters, even though he did not have a lot of screen time.
Right. Kind of wish he did though.
Yeah,
But yeah.
Phyllis Green played by Stephen Fry, and I also recognized him immediately. I was like, oh, okay, hell yeah, my guy. Love Stephen
Yeah.
Fry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic casting, by the way, especially for the character of Phyllis Green.
Mhm.
Well, who's he? Gilbert was his human name.
Oh, right. Yeah, I even forgot he had a human name for a bit.
Yeah, just the fact, just the way he talked about life, I was like, oh, like, you know, you just assume like older character who's been around the world. It's like, okay, like that's why he's very well spoken and very open minded when he talks, and he's very philosophical and all this other stuff.
Yep.
But yeah, he was kind of just like again another super warm character to just like, you know, like, oh, I needed this. You know what I mean? Like, I needed this in this dark ass show. That I just needed.
Yeah.
Someone who's just like a little bit more kind. You just needed someone who genuinely just felt kind, basically.
Yeah, definitely. And once again, as much as you say that you're an unga bunga kind of guy, like honestly, you are that, that kind character. So yeah, with the sense of humor.
Yeah. Probably like favorite character, I guess, not in regards to relating to. Death and Gilbert.
Nice.
Just because again, just the way that Death went about not being, a super cold, just like it's time we go, you know what I mean, type of deal. Like, she talked about like, sometimes it just, at that very moment of a person's life, of their death, they just need a kind smile to see on the way out, basically, essentially.
Yes.
And I was like, that's fantastic. That is a very, very good message right there. Like in that episode, again, that episode was kind of a feel good episode to begin with, but just that was like, yeah, Death is a good character. I really like her a lot.
Yeah, I would say, Death is definitely one of my favorite characters. And I do like, at least I do appreciate the change. I do.
Yeah, and again, like he's the main character, and I as much as he's such a insufferable piece of garbage a lot of the times, but Morpheus is a cool character. Like he is. A little one note, because again, I think they're trying to show his character being this cold and kind of a calculating character.
Mm-hmm.
Very much so, I'm in charge type of deal. But like, again, he's literally like the power trip character. You want to be the main hero. You know what I mean? That's what it is.
Yeah. And imagine how powerful dreams are.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And in his monologue with explaining how dreams are so powerful in the first place, it's like, okay, yeah, you're cool. I get it. Like, you're a cool character if you weren't being such a baby all the time.
Which is interesting because on rewatching Star Wars, I'm like, wow, like Luke Skywalker is really broody and whiny, but like back in the day, it's like, whoa, this guy's so cool.
Yeah. With a different lens, we're much older, obviously, now versus watching it the first time, right? So our view on the world has changed.
Oh, definitely.
I've heard the joke many times of like, when you're young, you're SpongeBob and Patrick, and when you're older, you're Squidward. You just hate everyone. Like, yeah,
which is so true.
Yeah. But yeah, like I think favorite characters overall, I think for me, yeah, Gilbert / Phyllis Green and Death. That's probably my two favorite characters of the show.
Nice.
That being said, I'm also interested in just seeing what Desire plays out to be more, because again, I just like the idea that they're the plotting, character behind the scenes kind of deal.
Which is interesting because you figured that would be Lucifer, which Lucifer is,
Yes, they are. You see a quick return to Lucifer. What, episode 8 or episode 9?
Yep. And I think even in the end, is that right? I don't know.
Is it? I don't remember exactly when, but yeah, when basically they're talking about expanding their realm, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like I'm down for this. I was very interested. I'm very interested in where that goes as well too.
Oh, I am interested in you seeing where it goes to, because that is another major. Well, I don't want to spoil it, but
I'll get to it eventually.
So some really cool stuff happens, and I really do hope that they make another season.
Also, I hope Cain and Abel shows up more.
Yes, and definitely the welcome comic relief throughout. So yeah.
And I guess the other character I want to see more of is Constantine, because we only really got to see her in like two episodes, really.
Right? Yeah.
She's like a super capable, badass exorcist character. So it's like, okay, that's cool. I do appreciate that they did a little bit of like a rollback to her on episode 6 during the Hob half of the episode.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, so like I want to see what more of her exploits, what she gets. I want to see more of what she gets up to.
Yeah, and interesting point too. If I'm not mistaken, Joanna Constantine is John Constantine's great grandmother, something like that.
Oh, actually, good question. Is she supposed to be John Constantine, or was that in the comic as well too, where it's a woman?
A bit of both. So ding 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 ding. Correct, Lakan, you have won. Hopefully another season.
Okay, so that's one of the ones that was originally a dude in the comic.
I mean, you get John Constantine, and also I do believe you do get Joanna. So instead of having two separate characters, you have one. I could be wrong, so listeners don't quote me on it, and don't give me any backlash for it, or feel free to give backlash. I don't really care. Any backlash on my behalf, it would be well deserved. Just kidding. But anyway, yeah. That's another one of the ones too where there was some backlash, like, how dare you make John Constantine, Jenna Louise Coleman? But then again, hey, she's super cute.
Yeah,
I would say on par with Death.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would have really gotten angry at the show just calling it woke. That's basically my assumption of what the initial reaction to the show would have been.
Right. Which is interesting because, Sandman itself was woke way back in the day before woke was a thing. And now it's woke now, and not a whole lot's changed. Well, I mean, some things, once again, the swapping, but then you figured the audience, and the fans would have had figured that out and made that part of themselves by now and just enjoyed it. But yeah.
Yeah. Not everyone changes with the times. That's fair.
Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, again, like I would have assumed I did assume there's I'm assuming that's a flip, but that's cool because so they are technically two separate / same entities, I guess. Then, yeah, okay, that's cool. Again, like the whole one of the things I appreciated of the show was the fact that nothing was hard coded, so you could easily flip a gender or change a race of a character, and it wouldn't have changed how the story actually plays out.
Yeah. And it works out well because you can kind of put yourself in each one of these characters, and that's part of the beauty of it too, especially considering the endless. Like, one of the reasons why I did ask you, like, which character you resonated with is, it's almost like those online tests, like, oh, which member of the endless are you? I'm like, oh, I don't know. And I think the big idea is, for the most part, you're always going to be little bits and pieces of one or some of them. So,
yeah, but. Yeah, I gotta say, like, overall I enjoyed the show. Not my favorite watch on first watch. Like I'm not putting down the show whatsoever. I'm not putting it down. It's like I think just like in terms of like how I consume the show, because again, this is a podcast and I have we have timelines for things, right? I don't get to enjoy this at my leisure. Like I like my truest like just kind of comfort level, which is I like to sit and ruminate with things. Even if I don't usually get past the most basic of themes right off the bat. A lot of times when I consume media, I'm pretty not brain off, but a lot of times I try to just enjoy things for what they are and early on. But this show is a lot is headier than I thought it was going to be. Which does almost demand a second watching and a deeper dive into the actual source material and stuff.
Which you should. And then I also figure it would have benefited from like the way you would normally have consumed other shows, which a week at a time, you watch it, think about it. It's heavy. Let that dissipate. Let you, let the stuff percolate.
Was this a weekly release show, or was this a typical Netflix release everything in one type of deal?
I believe it was release everything in one shot kind of deal, because I think the releasing in batches only happened recently. So
okay,
yeah.
Yeah, because I know like I still haven't watched Stranger Things, but I know like the last season of Stranger Things was like weekly, right? So like everyone had something to talk about every week. I think this again, like if this was released as a binge, I think it would be like almost like a disservice to it. I think this is a show that requires time to breathe and to actually sit upon the ideas and themes it covers.
Yeah. Oh, totally agreed. Like, yeah, it'd be the kind of thing of like, you know, where you almost have like a book club, you know, it'd be a Sandman club where you watch an episode and then, you know, chill out at a goth cafe somewhere.
Yeah. Definitely I can see the show being like one of those shows where you go onto Reddit every week and talk about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And hopefully people like me that read the comics or, you know, whatever wouldn't spoil anything.
Yeah.
Just make you excited for what's coming up next, which I hope you are.
Yeah. This confirm if it was just greenlighted for another season or not yet?
I believe so.
Oh, then that's good. So hopefully the second season, you know, plays out in at least a manner that's hopefully it's just give it more time to breathe. I think this is how it is, because like the fear is right, if you expand it too much, it starts to drag, because again there's a lot going on in the show and a lot of it is like exposition, right? If you do too much of that, then the show starts to overstay its welcome. But this is one of those shows where, because there's so much going on, if in my opinion, it needs room to breathe.
Yep, totally agreed. And yeah, you know, I mean, it'll be a while before we get the second season, unfortunately, you know, because I do like it when, you know, shows have one season a year and then you're able to consume it. And then, you know, which is where I'm kind of bummed about, you know, some of the more recent shows, you know, like Last of Us, like we were talking about, like, you know, Last of Us season 2 it's going to be another couple of years before it comes out, to the point where I'm considering, you know, like I told you, I'm considering playing the game just to get the story in. Yeah. But yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a weird thing for me, because I already played the game, so I knew what the show was going to be. So I guess that's why I wasn't thrown off by it. But yeah, so I guess that's really it on my end of the season. Those are my notes. Anything else you want to bring up before we wrap it up here?
No, apart from the fact that I'm glad you enjoyed it, Lakan. I am looking forward to what's coming up next. Interestingly enough, you know, I asked, you know, which of the endless, or you know, which of the characters resonate with you, and one for me, one of my favorite characters in the whole, you know, whole work is Delirium. So excited to see what happens there. So yeah, so listeners, you know, watch the show, watch it with one of your friends, you know, talk about it and give it that time to breathe. You know, hopefully don't binge it. And yeah, watch it and you know, hit us up on social media. Once again, the podcast has you guys got a Twitter, you guys got an Instagram, right?
Yep, we have Twitter, Instagram, and email. It's all listed in the description of the episodes. But yeah, I think that'll be it for this episode. Give us a like, give us a 5 stars rating, whatever podcast listening service you're on. We'd appreciate if you guys come back for the next episode, and we'll see you guys next time. Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's intense.
I kind of feel like I should bring some of these.
Just don't release Ants My Fucking House.